Can you really prove that your app is working? I've seen managers request this from developers, and I've seen other developers who claim that they can prove that their code is working. But is that really possible? The truth is that it's not possible to prove it 100% sure, and I'm going to explain why in this video. There's three reasons why you can't prove that your app is going to always work in every scenario. For one, we have the halting problem. So this is something that goes back to the very first time that computers were conceived in the 1930s in Alan Turing's math paper. And one of the things he mentioned is the halting problem, in which he proved that it is impossible to prove that your application will not enter an infinite loop. So that's something that's been proven with mathematics. And so that's one thing you will never be able to prove, that your app does not have this infinite loop bug. Now, that's a pretty theoretical argument. Most people are going to be looking for something more practical than that, because anytime you have a code change without a loop of any kind, I'm pretty sure it's not going to enter the infinite loop, even if it's impossible to prove it. So that's a very good point right there, that correct functionality is different from being able to prove that it has the correct functionality, right? And this video is about, can you prove it? So one way of proving that your app is working might be to test your application and just test every possible scenario. Isn't that possible, right? Well, not really, because there might be infinite scenarios, or even if there's a finite number of test cases, it could be practically infinite, right? I mean, if you don't have time to test every single test case, then it might as well be infinite, right? If it's more than you have time for. And some of these scenarios might not be worth the time, like arithmetic overflow. In other words, the user typing in a number that's too large for the computer to understand. So that would be like over 4 billion on a 32-bit app. That's something that I've never seen an app that validates for that. I question how you even would validate for that, since the computer can't really understand what the user typed in. So some of these things might not even be worth the time. And when I say more scenarios than you have time for, keep in mind that the number of scenarios, it's not just every combination of what the user can type into a web form. It also depends on like all the different values in the database that are being referenced, and entering in every possible combination of value for all of those fields. Can you do that? I mean, maybe with random input testing you can, but even then, did you really hit every possible scenario? There might be infinite scenarios in some cases. And another one you might not have time for is on the UI. If you have a UI with 3 different buttons, it matters what order you click the buttons. So like clicking button 1, 2, 3 is a different test case from clicking button 3, 2, 1. And the application might work in one scenario and not the other. And if you have an app like Visual Studio or Photoshop that's got like 100 buttons on the screen, you're probably not going to have time to test every button click in every order for every code change. And the third and most important reason is because of hardware failure. So most of the issues that get reported as bugs are not bugs. They are hardware failures, right? Because a bug is a software problem where the functionality of the software did not match the requirements that were specified in writing. So, but most of these problems that occur in production that are described as bugs, these are hardware failures. Typically, it's a network outage or a network slowdown. The next most common problem is database server being out of disk space. That covers about 90% of the problems that are described as bugs. So, if there's a hardware problem, don't come to the software developer with that. We're not going to be able to fix it, right? These things can be fixed by the IT department, and as a developer, the most you can do is just make sure you add good logging so you can quickly verify that that it is a hardware failure and it's not a bug. And ideally, the IT department should have monitoring tools that allow them to check the log files themselves. Um, and that's really the best way to do it. And there is no logic that the software developer can implement to compensate for hardware failure, unless you have maybe redundancy and you're going to switch to a failover server or something like that. But I mean, other than that, there isn't really anything you can do in the code for it to continue working. If the hardware that it's running on is malfunctioning, too bad at that point. So, in conclusion, you cannot prove that your app is working, and you should never say that you can, even if management is saying that's what they want to hear. If you try to guarantee something like that, you're overpromising. The safest bet for the company is just to hire professional software testers. I've never said that out loud because if they're asking for a guarantee, it means they probably just don't have money to hire testers. But you know, that's the truth, is that you know, you can promise if you want, but you're not gonna be able to live up to it. So I recommend that you don't guarantee that your app is gonna work, or you don't say that you can prove the app is gonna work in every scenarios, because that's not possible. That's it for today. Remember to follow, like, subscribe, and share.